We are back. You are chatting with John P. Today we are going to be talking about some cool watches that we got in at delraywatch.com. There were some watches outside in the office that were being processed, and I saw a couple of cool ones here that I know are big watch fanatic favorites, and I want to share them with you. So for those of you that are not familiar with the models, or maybe you're looking for the model, because I know one or two of these here definitely some people are looking for, we can kind of share these with you. I'll give you my thoughts and opinions on them as well. And of course, as usual, you can leave in the comments below what you think about these models, because I know at least one of them might be a little bit polarizing. But of course, thank you so much for coming back for another episode. I really do appreciate it. Do not forget to thumbs up, like, and subscribe. You've been so much of a big help. It's really helped me gain a little bit of traction here, and I know that based on the comments below, we've been able to kind of take the channel and breach out and get a lot more interesting conversations, which I always really enjoy, of course, on Instagram as well, The Real John P. So let's jump right into the first watch. Actually, I have it on my wrist today because I really enjoy this one a whole lot, and I think the brand does not get enough love. It's a Karl F. Bucher, and this one is the Power Reserve version of the Petravi. Now, the Petravi line, or the Petravi, however you want to pronounce this, there's a couple of different case sizes, shapes, and also the features. Now, this specific model, which, of course, once again, we have available, is more of a classic dress watch, but with a bit of a casual flair. So the size is a little bit smaller. I believe this is 38 millimeters, so it's a good dress watch size, but it's also a great casual watch for someone with a small wrist like myself at 6.5 inches around. Now, what I also really like about this watch is that the power reserve indicator kind of works twofold. So in the picture, you can see that it has a normal power reserve indicator in where the hand will show you how much power reserve is there, how long the movement will run on its own without needing to be wound. But on the other end of the power reserve, it kind of has a little bit of a branch on the arrow on the other side of the hand that also gives you a little bit more of a legible way to see the power reserve indicator with kind of that traditional gauge, like something you would see in a car with the red markers there, as opposed to a much bigger sweep. So I just think that's an interesting take. You know, it's a very subtle detail, but that's often what I'm drawn to in watches, is subtle details. This one, of course, features a top grade at a movement, so a good solid workhorse movement that is very well decorated for what it is. So a pretty good value buy, in my opinion. Now, jumping into this next one, this one's much more high-end, but it certainly says so in the name with a Holy Trinity watch. This is an Audemars Piguet Edward Piguet. Now, Edward Piguet is typically dress watches. They're a little bit higher end, typically precious metal, if not always precious metal. I'm trying to think back in history. I think pretty much all the Edward Piguets were precious metal, but there might be a couple stainless floating around out there, especially in Europe. This one is limited edition. What I like about this is not only it features the in-house AP movement, which is a very fine, very sophisticated movement. This is also a very limited edition version of this watch. If you look around, you Google, you Chrono 24, you watch Recon, you can see that this watch does come in a couple of dial variations, but what this one has is these orange numerals and accents that with the stock AP strap has orange stitching. Now, I don't really see orange used in a lot of dress watches, and we kind of just passed Halloween, so it would have been a great Halloween watch, but overall, you could put it on any strap you want, and I think it's a really good watch to get into a dress watch from a Holy Trinity. Of course, it is a little bit smaller in size compared to a much larger watch, which we'll talk about here in a second, but it is a dress watch, once again, much like the first pseudo dress watch. So something to consider. I like this one a whole lot, and it also works great on a smaller wrist like my own. Now, this next one, this one is a fan favorite, and there is some controversy as to whether or not these are available. This is the Tudor Black Bay GMT with the Pepsi bezel. Some will even say that it's a Coke bezel, but it's not. It's Pepsi. The blue is just a little bit dark, so in different lighting conditions, it looks a little bit different, which is much different than the vintage Rolex GMT Masters that are out there. Now, I did a video recently about this watch and Tudor in general, talking about this watch, the Black Bay 58, and I was very surprised, even to this day, to receive comments from people saying, I can't get one, I can't get one, I cannot get one of these. I was a bit confused. I called around to ADs, I went to ADs, and not all of them had it, but they were there, and if you're willing to pay, they can get you one very quickly if they did not have one in stock. And we purchased this watch from a collector who, much like myself, just walked into an AD and found one available. It was not for him. It's a little bit thicker of a watch, thicker of a case size compared to something like a Black Bay 58. Of course, features a different complication, the GMT hand, but it's a Pepsi, and that's what draws a lot of people to this specific watch. So what do you guys think about this watch? Are you still having trouble finding one? If you are, of course, you know who has one available. Now, staying in the same vein of Tudor, you'll see this is kind of a common theme, and I think that's probably why I grabbed these watches off the trading desk over there, is that Tudor, it seems like we're getting a lot more Tudors, and I don't really know if that's indicative of what's going on with the brand or the market, but I like to see the watches because I was missing them for a while when I thought Tudor was really slowing down. This one, of course, is the Tudor Heritage Black Bay with the red bezel. This one features their in-house movement. I like it a whole lot. It's a solid workhorse watch. You all know it. These things are everywhere. What I really like is that the tube spacer, the ring around the tube actually is red, so it matches the bezel. I think that's a really nice accent. And once again, I'm into the subtleties in these watches. If you don't hold these things in person, you don't necessarily see all these things in pictures. And of course, it has this, rivet-esque bracelet, which is just great in a heritage vintage inspired watch. What do you guys think about this watch? This watch is floating everywhere. I won't even try to hide that fact. So I know a lot of people have opinions about this specific version of the watch. Would love to hear what you think about it. And I think you get the general gist of what I feel about this watch. I'll do an Omega now, and then we'll finish with a Tudor. A Tudor, by the way, that I know a lot of people have been looking for. But this, of course, is the Omega Speedmaster Mark 40. Now, if you're a watch geek and you watch this channel and you watch other channels, you know the watch. You know this watch very well. This is the watch made very popular by Hodinkee Ben Clymer with his whole man in his watch book thing that went on. And this is kind of the watch that a lot of people were looking at when they saw the recent Hodinkee release or re-release of a watch that's supposed to look like this. What I like about this is it's a Speedmaster, though a smaller case because it is an automatic Speedmaster. So it's in a speedy reduced case. It's good for a smaller wrist, once again, like my own, but it's now turning vintage, right? So when you look at a watch like this from a transitional period and it starts aging, it's just ages in a different way than watches that were very old aging, right? So some of the components are not going to age and some of them are. So it just creates a very unique look, in my opinion, for all transitional watches, including this watch, where things like the blacks won't necessarily always age, but when you look at some of the colors like the mustard yellow or that baby blue, it just really kind of pops and stands out. Look in the picture and you'll get exactly what I mean about this watch. Do any of you own this watch? What do you think about it? Do you think that this is going to be an all-time collectible? Many people think that this is going to be, and the numbers have gone up. So there is some evidence there to support this. And lastly, I'd like to finish with a Tudor Pelagos LHD, the old left-hand drive. Now, if you're not familiar with this watch, of course, it's titanium. It's known by hardcore watch collectors and watch enthusiasts to be one of the more sportier Tudor watches. It's a high-quality watch, but it features some components and specs in this watch that really set it apart from other Tudors. Of course, the crown the crown is on the left side of the watch, which is unique. That it's not in a lot of watches out there, but really you can see where the watch was just flipped upside down. So when I wear these things, which is not too often, but when I do, I kind of like wearing it with the crown on the right-hand side and then just setting the time backwards to where the Tudor logo is upside down, yeah, that might be absolutely insane, but the whole left-hand drive thing is unique, but I just can't get it. So if you see a guy walking around Miami with an LHD on upside down, it's probably me, and yes, I intended to do that. Talking once again about these specs, because a lot of Tudor fans always make sure to drive home this, and I will get absolutely nailed if I don't mention it. This is just a solid workhorse, rugged watch. Aside from the much deeper depth rating, the 500 meter depth rating compared to any other Tudors in the lineup, it's titanium. It's very hard, it's solid, but it's also a light watch, and it features a micro adjusting clasp that the other Tudor watches do not feature, which is always a big deal for those that have in-between wrist measurements, or you just like to have these types of features because it's nice. So if you actually pull down on the bracelet, it adjusts and you can kind of bump out this clasp to an outer position that is spring-loaded that will actually fit to your wrist just perfectly. So typically when you're adjusting a micro adjustment, it's in very small, like 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters, something like that. But when you get into the spring loaded, it's almost infinitely adjustable to where you put it on your wrist and it just snugly wraps and forms to your wrist, which I think is very cool. And you almost never see that in a tool watch. So it's nice to see that, especially from a brand that's really developing themselves as a tool watch leader. Albeit this is not one of their newest models compared to something like the Black Bay GMT. Do you guys think that maybe they should put this clasp on other watches? Because I know there's clasp guys out there and they absolutely love this. Or do you hate it? I don't know. Comments below, like and subscribe, thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And of course, anything you'd like to see in the future, leave in the comments below. I have a list. I have a backlog. I'm working through it. So if you ask for something, please hang tight. It is surely coming in the pipeline. Thanks, guys. You have been chatting with John P. Ciao.